You need to take this and maybe you'll have someone there. You can go online, joanjerkovich.com, and you'll. The person, if I was following you right, was a female you were talking to who's been having some relationship problems.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be something pastors fall into and have to be available for all the time.
Well, it was kind of interesting because this is somebody I work with at the grocery store, and she's opened the door.
We're still on video. You know that. Okay.
But she just opened up, and I just flat just said it right straight to her.
Yeah.
I just said, you know what, you don't recognize who you are. I said, and she said, and she asked questions that really were leading, and I said, if we weren't on the clock, we could talk more. But she just gets in and out of relationships. But it's not just them; it's other people that do the same thing because they don't realize who they are
or they don't
what
have
they can
that
be.
self-worth.
Yeah.
I think when you said the value, they have to have their own self-worth, self-value.
Yeah.
And I would think even in the cowboy culture, you know, they're kind of seen more as the common working guy and not held as in high esteem as a white-collar workers maybe or something like that. But darn, you know, salt of the earth, work hard.
Yeah.
Doing stuff a lot of people wouldn't want to do.
That's right.
You know, really, I mean, those cowboys came back working my brother's cattle, and we had them come back for lunch, and it's like we aren't going to come in the house. I guarantee that because you know they were pretty covered. You know, they had a nice aroma.
I was going to say you would need ambiance, and that was ambiance.
I know, but not in the house. We had I had enough ambiance on the front porch. So with that,
enough was enough.
Yeah, but again, you know, growing up on a farm and stuff, all of those. We never did that with me growing up, but you know, with my dad and his ranching and stuff, we never had the cows.
So did you go to Hoiston school?
I did, Hoiston High School. Yes, and we've got a bunch of those people here in Salina. So, and you know, how did a person who went to Hoisington, graduated Fort Hayes in nursing, get a radio show? I don't know. You'll have to ask Jerry Henriquez that one. I schmoozed him on a good day.
Yeah, I was going to say, either he said, man, she can talk a lot.
Yeah, I know, I can. And I've been criticized for that, but then, you know, if you kind of look back at that and go, you know, actually that gift of gab or whatever, you know, helps me out, especially when I get a real quiet and shy. You know, you were easy to talk to. That's probably my first question when someone says, oh, I've got somebody great for your show. It's like, okay, do they talk? You know, because you get those ones who come in here and panic or don't speak or are very...
Obviously, Dave prepared the way, didn't he?
Exactly who to call. Well, listen, I'm going to let you go, and thank you again for coming on board.
You bet. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, I did.
You bet. So now I got to... In fact, there's somebody in Pennsylvania who wants to see this because she's heading up our...
I love that. And here, you need to take this, and maybe you'll have someone there. You can go online, joanjerkovich.com, and you'll... Yep. Okay. It's starting. Okay.
Yeah, you know, Claudette came over from the Catholic Church.
Oh, she did? Yeah.
Her daughter was actually the one that convinced her that, Mom, if you come to our church, it'll change your life.
Oh, wow. Her daughter?
Her daughter.
The young girl? A young girl at her. Yeah, and she, it was interesting though because they had the thing on the Salina Post about the young man, the 20-year-old that got picked up for the Facebook with supposedly a very underage 13-year-old. And there was actually a young lady that responded to that post, because I watched that, because that is actually this station, and she said, I'm 14 and I'm really, really worried about my 15-year-old friend. So I posted back, replied to her post, and I said, please watch my show. You know, the DVAC person will tell you exactly what you need to do to help your friend. And
I got to interrupt real quick, and I assume this is correct. It's going to look different up here because we don't have a tape in here. Instead of a full record, I just have a flashing record.
Yes.
And that's right.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And you'll want to turn your screen, of course, where you can glance in case we get the microphone.
Yeah.
We have our video guy edit out some of this little bit of chitter chatter, but when we go on break, so it'll probably go up. So
you should be good as far as if you're telling me that's all there's you should be good.
Yes. And I know that's, you know, something that we've talked about. We we want to make sure it's good the first time.
Y'all work out the bugs and do what you got to do.
So now, just real briefly, you have someone in your parish that had this near-death thing happen?
Well, I know somebody. No, somebody I'm really close to.
Okay, that's interesting.
I care not to mention their names.
No,
but I do know
absolutely.
That the Lord gave them an opportunity to. They were gone for probably 15 20 minutes, and in that time frame, they
Mhm.
actually,
Mhm.
yeah, well, then the question was when I got, why the Lord allowed me to come back? Why did he just?
Ooh, I really want to hear this. So let's get on the
Yeah,
actual
you-
show. We
you
might
know,
get some of this on the
you
pre-show.
You don't know. You don't. I mean, it's just a part of the experience. But we'll talk. Let's just talk. Let's just talk.
We're just going to talk.
Let's just talk.
Exactly.
Let's
That's
do it.
exactly how it works. So, okay, we're doing 14 minutes, and this is Joan back with the Joan Jerkovich Show, 910 KINA, and our second guest here this morning is Pastor Alan Smith. We have two pastors here on the show this day, and this Pastor Smith is here from St. John's Missionary Baptist Church in Salina, and I asked him to come in and talk to me a little bit about the extremely popular book, Heaven is for Real, about the near-death or experience that the young boy from Nebraska had. So are you a little bit familiar with, welcome first of all, and are you a little familiar with the storyline?
Yes, Joan. Haven't completely read the book, but I'm not familiar enough to feel like I can talk about it, and plus my own vocation, what I do, I certainly feel like we can give some insight and comments toward his experience.
Well, and certainly in your position as a pastor, and I was really excited when we called you to maybe come on and talk about this. You have a close acquaintance
Correct.
that you're not going to mention any names, but
Right.
you can share a real life experience about that. And I want to just go back and talk a little bit about the book, that it was a 4-year-old boy who was from a small town in Nebraska. His father was actually a pastor himself.
Correct.
And he had an emergency surgery where he slipped from consciousness and feels he entered heaven.
Right.
And he survived and began talking about being able to look down and see the doctor operating, see his dad praying in the waiting room.
Right.
He felt he met his miscarried sister,
Correct.
which he'd never heard about, and his great-grandfather, who died 30 years before he was even born.
Right.
So how does this ring with you? What?
I mean, Joe, I don't know. I mean, it seems to be a great phenomenon in my people, but for a
Yeah.
pastor, it's not a surprising
Really?
thing. Let me really be honest. Think about the Bible itself is a revelation from God. There's particular revelations in the 4th and 5th chapter where John said, you know, I went up to the 3rd heaven. And so the idea of God doing something now, as compared to what he did before, he's still the same God. And so I think every now and then God has to let us know that, hey, I am still the same God,
Mm-hmm.
and I can still do some of the same things, i.e. give a little boy a preview of what heaven is like and allow him to come back and be my greatest witness, because out of the pureness of a child's heart, this child comes back and shares experiences that his mom or dad hadn't told him, and they're so vivid in detail. So for the pastor who has faith in God and knowing how God has revealed himself before, this is awesome for me. This is awesome for me.
Absolutely.
To have a little boy.
It just gives me chills when you talk about the witness of a young child.
Yes.
Who's
Yes.
so innocent
Yes.
and is not conjuring up stories, or we don't feel he is. How
No.
could he know these things?
Exactly. And so I think that adds credibility. And I think that was probably, not that I'm God, but knowing the credibility that if God was going to try to establish credibility in sharing a revelation of his through someone, what better way to do it except through the heart of a child?
And in such a cynical society
Right.
that we can
Exactly.
have,
Exactly.
you know, it seems like a perfect complement to
Yes.
what we see in the world today.
Yes.
And the over-infiltration of media that we have, you
Mhm,
know,
mhm.
that to have just this innocent little boy who just began saying things like they drove by the hospital at first, and,
Right.
and the dad said something, or the mother on their way to Arby's, I think it was,
Right.
and said, you know, do you remember that place? And it's like, yeah, that's where I saw the angels.
Mm.
And that was one of the first things I think he said.
Yeah.
It's been a little while since I read the book, but
Right.
one of the first
Right.
things he said, and then they kind of go, well, that's interesting. And at first didn't believe it. And then, of course, the story
More details.
started to
Yeah.
unfold and more
Yeah.
details came out. Tell us some more about this person that you're acquainted with and what their experience was.
Well, I'll just share with you a conversation with an individual who had, we thought they were gone for a period of time. And
Now, were you actually like in the hospital with this person or bedside?
I was actually there with the person.
Okay.
And that person, let's say approximately 15, 19 minutes, was gone. And, you know,
Now, let me make sure we understand this. 15 or 19 minutes, are you saying the doctors and nurses were saying?
I'm saying
we're done.
we
They
could
pulled-
not revive
they
this
quit
person.
trying to revive
There
the
was
person?
no, in a legal, technical manner, I can probably say, I'm not a doctor,
Right.
but I was there, and this
Mhm.
person was probably in a legal sense, and I'm not say all the medical terms, but there was no active sign of life.
Right.
And so consequently, and then by the grace of God, by the work and the power of God, that person was revived, returned. And part of that is that God allowed him to see, have a sneak preview. God allowed him to have this just encouragement to say, okay, when the time really does come, I just want you to be encouraged to know that there's a better place than
Wow.
down here.
And this is what? Tell us what he heard, what he saw, what
Well,
he reported to you.
It's just a matter of seeing. It's more of a light experience, more
Uh-huh.
of seeing what we would call the glory of the Lord,
Mhm.
and being able to say heaven is described as a new place, a better place. And so it was just a situation where he literally asked, why didn't God let me stay?
I've heard that.
Rather than let me come back.
It's so beautiful. It's so
Right.
peaceful and
Right.
wonderful. Why do I have to go back?
Right. And so my response to this person was, obviously your work is not done.
Good response.
But you have an awesome motivation. And you also have a peace. Because, I mean, I think to some of the skeptics and even to some believers, Christians, heaven is not real because it's not a tangible thing that I can really put my hands on, and it's described in a spiritual way. And so often when things are not tangible and they become more of a spiritual, then that just leaves greater room for skepticism. And so God does, whether it be shows us things, whether he does miracles, whether he does things that obviously we can't explain, we have to acknowledge that there is a God that is greater than us, and there's a place that is prepared for every believer. And this 4-year-old boy is just a testimony to God saying, hey, here I go again. This time I'm using an innocent child, and he's able to produce details that even his parents had to say, hey, this had to be God, because we didn't tell him about it, he didn't know. And consequently, this was an older gentleman, and this older gentleman, like I said, was just a man of God. He knew the Lord, and he knew enough about the Lord to say what he had seen was a preview of heaven, and he was able to come back, live for about another year, and then went on to be with the Lord.
Did he describe any visual images of what this preview of heaven was?
He didn't.
The light.
He wasn't able to do
as in details as a little boy in
as
the
a little
book.
boy did.
Mhm.
I just think what I know about this man is that
Mhm.
he had such a peace
Mm.
in one sense, because he would rather have stayed, but he had such a peace about now knowing that when I do finally leave my earthly body, there's an eternal resting place.
Mhm.
And based upon that, so we didn't have this story. We were trying to write a book or anything, but it's just a situation where, for him, it was what he needed to be able to come back and have peace, finish the work that God
So was
has
there
for him.
something, as his pastor, you knew he maybe needed going into this experience? It did something for him, it did something to him?
I think the human part of us, I don't care who you are, the human part of us can have doubt about things. And if it did nothing else, Lord, yes, I believe, but if I had any doubt before,
Mm-hmm.
I have no doubt now.
Mm-hmm.
And so based upon that,
I believe, but I'm not sure.
yeah, I mean, we want
I
certainty.
think that's just
we
human.
we
That's
want,
human
yeah, we
nature.
want to be able to put our hands
Yeah.
on it, feel it, touch
We're
it.
all a bit of doubting
Right,
Thomas.
right. So I mean, for that purpose, and I think that was God's purpose for him, is to just give him that peace to say, hey, if there ever was any doubt about whether your eternal resting place is there and secure and will be available to you upon departure from this physical body, then you're able to go back and share that for the next year. That's real. It's really real.
And so it was such a deeply spiritual experience. Did this person happen to say anything about meeting or seeing deceased friends or relatives?
Didn't go
No,
that-
didn't.
go
I mean,
that-
because
didn't
I
go
think
that far.
everyone who has these experiences,
Yes.
the reading I've done,
Okay.
they all come back with different experiences.
Right.
Some go deeper,